Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Masters of Self University podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Lee.
And I'm your host, Danny Morley. And today we're going to be talking about alcohol. Now, this is something, obviously, we've spoke about a lot on this podcast. It's a kind of a big part of my journey, and definitely some of the life lessons that I've been learning in this lifetime. And I have started to just experiment by allowing myself to drink an occasional beer again. And just to give any listeners context, I grew up in the UK. I drank a lot throughout my early teens, my 20s. And then around 6 years ago, I drove myself into a hole, drank way too much, partied too hard. It was actually in Thailand. And woke up the next day, dark night of the soul, severe depression. And there became my journey of awakening and, eventually led me onto this path. But while I was kind of like completely unconscious, I used to drink and it used to make me feel good. And I didn't realize at the time that it was a massive coping mechanism for what I was feeling socially. And obviously there was a lot of cultural conditioning that I had received, and a lot of, mirroring my parents and the way that they would use alcohol to cope with their feelings. But really, I would drink it and it made me feel good. And then when I was moving through this dark night of the soul, all of a sudden alcohol didn't make me feel good anymore. It was like night and day. A sip of it wouldn't have the same effect. All of a sudden it would make me feel really bad. And so I had to step away from that. And I stopped drinking. And as of 2 years ago, I finally arrived at a place, thanks to this work, of really being in my power and being like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm good. I'm done. Maybe it won't be forever, but for now, I'm done. It's not serving me. And I didn't touch a drink for 2 years. And we were recently in Thailand. And for, I would say, like the month prior, leading up to it, I was kind of getting this urge to just try it and to just experience and see what it was like. And so while I was away, I did. I indulged. I had a beer with a few friends, a couple on occasions. I had one in the airport on the way home, and it was really delightful. And I had a really nice time. And part of what I, had to almost like prove to myself or test was I able to be in control? Because the last time or before the dark night of the soul, before I was walking this path or anything, I would drink alcohol and there was no limit. I just wouldn't be able to stop. I would get completely out of control. I would get blacked out and do stupid things that I would wake up, not remember and regret. And so there was almost this part of me, it was almost really healing to be able to have a drink. And after one, or in, the occasions two, just be like, okay, that's it. I'm done. And find that level of self-control.
Yeah, beautiful. And, this is something that I can relate to, and I'd love for you to go deeper into just like the energy of allowing this to come back into your fields, because it is an energy of addiction, right? When you say it's a coping mechanism, it's a way that we cope with what's going on. And when you don't, when you're disconnected, we use a lot of coping mechanisms. And for me, it was marijuana for a long amount of years where I would just smoke every day. And that was like my way to not feel everything that was constantly bombarding in my face. And so you having done all of this work and then allowing and inviting this energy back has been fascinating to experience from the outside. But also I'd love for you to go into what that's really now you're experiencing. What are you moving through now that and it's, you haven't done anything extreme. You know, you've tried it. It's not like you had 4 or 5 beers and you went crazy with it. You had one and it made you feel good, which is fascinating in itself because it was making you feel bad for so long. And the fact that, and I think that too, there is a level of elevation in that, right? In drinking the one thing and having it not affect you in such a negative way. So I'd love for you to go into what it's made you feel. And when you say it made you feel good, what does that mean?
Yeah, so let's get real clear on this. When I drink alcohol now, it doesn't overall feel good. I just want to like make myself clear here. Once the alcohol is in my system, like, oh, gross, like this is what it feels like. I'd like forgotten the feeling, and it doesn't particularly feel good now. But there is an aspect when I first start to drink that I can really feel. It's like as soon as I take a sip, there's a moment where it's like, and I've realized, like, I remember having this feeling and this sensation, like, all growing up. And then, as I said, it went away. And now it's back again. And so it feels good just momentarily. And this is, I believe, this is the part of me that was addicted to some capacity to this substance. Now, I was never a person that woke up and needed a drink, never like that. But as soon as the day was going, definitely drawn towards, hey, let's go for a drink, you know, that kind of level of like alcoholism. And it's obviously so heavily just bred into Western society, especially growing up in the UK. It's just everything revolves around drinking. And so I would take a sip, and this is what I experience now. I can take a sip and I can feel there is something being fed it feels good. And it's the same energy that then translocated onto food and coffee. So what happened was, because I stopped drinking alcohol, that same addictive energy then switched onto food and coffee. And so while I didn't have a problem not drinking in those years that I didn't, the energy that was underlying there, I haven't fully healed. I haven't got down to the very root, which what I felt is like the root of this addiction or this addictive energy is there's this powerlessness that's in there. There's like survival energy. And when I drink, what alcohol does is it just numbs me out. It stops me having to feel all of that, and which makes everything more enjoyable. And that's the initial like, oh, this feels good. Then once I've had the beer, I'm like, oh, this is really like, I don't particularly enjoy being at that level of consciousness now. It feels very fuzzy and blurry. But I did years ago. But there is an initial feeling, and this is obviously the drug aspect of alcohol, where it's like a chemical, where it's having some sort of like chemical effect inside of me. When I drink it, it's like, oh yeah, it's numbing down, it's turning off my ability to feel so much, and there's probably so much survival energy in there that I've been working through layer on layer on layer. And that's why it feels like now I'm at a place where I've healed many layers of what was in there, which is why it's felt like I was being encouraged to just open the door up and see what else was inside.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a food for thought for anybody to really sit with, because uh this translocation of energy, right? So for me too, I stopped smoking weed 2.5 years ago, and I just couldn't do it anymore. It made me feel like shit. Whereas before, it was the way that I escaped. It was the way that I tapped out. It was the way that for a few hours I didn't have to feel everything that I was feeling outside of when I was high. And when that stopped working, all of that went to food. And the past 2 years, I have been in a very fucked up whirlwind of eating and going into the depths of why am I eating so much and why am I reaching for food constantly? And like, if a regular person actually saw what I ate all day, they'd be like, "You're not eating that much," but for my body, like, I can't be eating all of this stuff, and it's this constant. Like, even today, it's like, "Why are you reaching for this snack, Ellie? You know what is it that you're not wanting to feel?" And so this whole thing that you're talking about, translocation, like, I can see it very clearly for me. When the weed left, when I stopped antidepressants, it was like everything that was in there had to start focusing on somebody else, on something else. and that came out in food, which it's so detrimental to us, right? Any kind of addiction or any of that energy is just hurts us in so many ways.
Yeah, and it's growing up, I never would have thought that I had any like problems with eating or with coffee. Like that was never an issue. And I reflect back now and realize, yeah, because the energy was being expressed through the consumption of alcohol. So, some of us run these programs, these coping mechanisms. And if you just simply change the behavior, it's not healing at the root level. So I was enough in my power to say, okay, no more alcohol. But that then, as I mentioned, like came out through food. So the last couple of years, I've been like, it's the energy. It comes down to that, right? It's the energy that you're approaching this thing with. There was something there. I was like, I've never experienced this. It's like this uncontrollable energy towards eating certain foods. For me, it was like always chocolate or pizza. And I work in a pizza place, so I'm just surrounded by temptations all of the time. So yeah, it's always the energy that we're coming from. And I never realized that I had that growing up. I was completely unaware that this addictive quality was in there until it came for a time like when I wanted to stop drinking, and then I was struggling and I had to like force myself to. And then you grow in enough power and then you're okay. And then now that I've opened that door up again, I can really see it. And so what happened the other day while I was at work, this is kind of like what sparked me to record this podcast, is that since like coming back, I think I had a beer after work one day, and since being back, it's like I've opened up that door and I've opened up the potential for an old stream of consciousness to be created, which is stop feeling what I'm feeling and numb out with alcohol. And what happened was I was at work and I started to think, oh, I could have a beer after work. Oh, it'd be great. And I was like, okay, there's a thought that just came in there. And then the thought went to, I could just pour a beer right now and just do a small one and no one would ever know. Just have it on the side. And this is something that I used to do in my late teens and throughout my early 20s. When I was bartending, I'd have a little drink going on the side. It was kind of, socially acceptable within that role as a bartender. But now going 2 years without alcohol, I know that me, the real me, Danny, the core of me, would never have that thought. I would never think, let me have a beer and jeopardize my job that I absolutely love, that's providing me with all of this financial stability in my life right now. I would jeopardize that for one little drink. I would never think that right now. The old me, yeah, I would have. But where I'm at now, no, absolutely not. So when I started to think this, I was like, whoa, where did that come from? Because I haven't like allowed those thoughts in, or those thoughts haven't ran through me, is what I should say, for the last like years. That doesn't even feel like me anymore. And this is what it allowed me to see, was that these thoughts are now being created and they are not me. They are not me. Whatever is being activated right now is a part of me that is either in my shadow or that I don't even recognize. And if I'm not in my power, I obviously could just recreate that stream of consciousness and recreate that behavior. And all of a sudden, I'll be back using alcohol on a regular basis as a coping mechanism. So it was really interesting to see. And it was almost like this aspect of my shadow just popped into the light. And because I allowed myself and trusted myself to open this door again, it's allowed me to see and feel this part of me that has been hiding and translocating in food and coffee.
Yeah, I hope everyone really sits with that, because when you told me that story, I really sat with that, because how easily, we listen to these mental programs, right? Especially when, when when you told me the story, I was like, oh, felt demonic. Like there was like a dark energy to it, like whispering in your ear, be like, maybe you should do this, this, and that, right? Things like, and when you said, like, I knew that wasn't me, and it caught me, like, whoa, that's not me. So what's going on there? And how many of us run these mental programs that, like, just slide in there and say a little bit, oh, eat that, or do that, or do. And it's like, when you don't have any self-awareness, you give into that because you think that mental program is you. And then here comes the downfall of it all, right? And so that allowed me to really, like, see, because there are times where I run a mental program and there is no awareness that obviously is a program, because the voice is familiar, and it's also what I'm used to, which is like dark, and like sabotaging in some way. And so that story really allowed me to, like, sit and be like, whoa, like, that isn't me. So if that isn't me, where is that coming from, and why is it speaking to me in that way?
Right. And it goes back to that, the whole thing of like, you are not your thoughts.
Yeah.
And I could really, in that moment, I was like, after I came home and I was telling you the story and we kind of broke it down, it was creating this huge expansion, because I was realizing that I'm having these thoughts, and I could quite clearly feel that this thought, which was being created and felt like to some degree it was running through my head, I knew that it wasn't me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not what I am. I am not the thoughts that I think. Sometimes I probably create them,
Mm-hmm.
but often what we're experiencing on a daily basis are the thoughts that are coming from the fractured and fragmented parts of us that are hiding in our shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And that was exactly this. And you're exactly right. It feels like this, like, little mischievous demonic, like, temptation, like
Yeah.
wrapping the claws around the door, like, hey, do it,
Mm-hmm.
drink the beer, eat the food, do whatever. And the beauty of this whole experience is that now I was struggling to feel and see this energy that's in there. And there's a little entitled kid that doesn't want to feel the powerlessness, the survival that's in there. And I'm sure there's other layers which I've not fully awakened to. There's definitely like some darkness about this, and there's definitely some, like, whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to do the opposite. So like a little rebellious kind of child in there. But I was struggling to see it through the lens of coffee and food, because the programs that would run of justification would like allow it to hide in my shadow. So things were like, well, you need to eat, you're hungry. And you'd be like, well, I do kind of feel a little hungry. And then I would eat a brownie, and they'd be like, well, um, and, all these things accumulatively would lower my vibration. And this instance was so clear that whatever was running through me at that moment wasn't the real me. I could feel a difference that this energy was coming from, and it wasn't my higher self. It wasn't what I want to create and be in this world. And so being able to feel that, it was like this, by opening the door, it allowed the kind of like the darkness to come out, and my awareness to shine a light on it. So it was really, really powerful, in allowing myself to open the door and trust myself that I'm not going to fall into all of the unconscious programs that I've done in the past of getting out of control. And in doing so, it's allowing me to see and really feel another aspect of me that's been sabotaging my path for the last couple of years, through food, and temptations like, oh, I'll have a coffee today, when that's probably, I should be really resting and allowing my nervous system to just calm down as all of this survival energy is coming out. And then obviously that creates a lot of like powerlessness and resistance and all this kind of stuff. So all in all, just a really beautiful experience, but really allowed me to feel like, oh, there's still some darkness in there that wants to hide.
Yeah, and also, just to emphasize, like, that's why the only thing that's really important is to study and understand energy, right? because you're at a place, right, in your level of consciousness, in your elevation, where you could feel the frequency of that program that ran that was trying to tell you to have a drink on the side while you're bartending, right? Had you been in your other state and very low, you would have probably given into that. Maybe not on a professional basis, like doing that at work, but there was probably a part of you that would have gave into that, right? Because your frequency where you're at is matching the vibrational frequency of that program. And so the fact that you could feel, oh man, this is low and this is dark and this isn't me. I mean, it's just a testament to how much work you've done. And that's why, like, everything that we teach at Master Self University is energetics. Because once you have energetics down and you can start feeling everything, that's where discernment really comes in, right? And that's where you can start to really feel the vibrations of every thought, every emotion, whatever it is.
Right. And we're just, we're on this whole journey of refining our discernment with between these different things. And this is what I've been struggling with, is I couldn't tell the difference between what are my thoughts and what are the thoughts of this, this little entitled kid, or and I couldn't tell the difference. And now I'm starting to really feel the difference. And this is obviously a part of me that's been hiding my blind spot. And so now through this experience, it's allowing me to feel that. But another thing I want to mention is I was aware in that moment of, oh yeah, this isn't the real me. Like the real me would never choose to think that. But also it's easy in that place, and I've done this before, is to then create separation, say that's not me, that's something else. And this is the mechanism in which I found like dark entities feed off of us, is through these wounds and these programs, is they feed on that energy, and they work through those programs. And if we allow them to run, obviously, if we choose to alchemize the wound, and open our heart and connect to our power and not recreate those, those pathways, those programs, then we don't allow those kind of like darker forces to feed on us and work through us. But there's a bypass here where we can say, oh, well, that's not me. And in fact, in that moment, it was me. It wasn't what I would class as like the real me, my soul, my like what I want to become. But in that moment, there was an aspect of my shadow self which was creating those programs.
Right.
And so it's important, what I found is to embrace that and say, oh, this isn't the real me, but it is how I am showing up right now. And I need to accept the fact that I'm running these programs, and not go into separation and say, yeah, this is me in this moment. It's not the real me, but it is me right now. I am showing up like this, and this is what I need to heal by embracing it and seeing it for all that it is, and then not recreating that stream of consciousness.
Yeah, because it comes down to we create, right? We are creator beings. And so even if, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, everyone, like, the bypassing stuff has to be checked for every scenario, basically, right? But even if entities are feeding on you, you've still created what they're feeding on, right? So at the end of the day, it is your shadow self, which means there's work to be done there, right? To alchemize.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm no expert in, all this kind of stuff, but this is what I've experienced within myself, is when we have the wounds and programs which allow those kind of, external forces to come in, that's what allows them, that's what gives them like consent, is we are unconsciously allowing them to feed on our wounds, our programs, and work through us. And there's a lot of that kind of stuff out there right now, and so it's no shame. I had to work through a lot of that when I was awakening to all of this. Like, there's no shame. It's just, oh, look at it, take accountability and ownership, heal it, and that's what can allow you to elevate out of it. So yeah, like moving through all of this, it's required so much trust in myself, because there was a long period of time where I was definitely kind of almost afraid of going back to the dark place that alcohol led me into. And there was a period where, I thought, oh, I never want to touch this stuff ever again. But it's been really beautiful to allow myself to just dip in and remember what it feels like, and come from a completely different energy that I did before. And it's really allowed me to see a new part of where I still need to heal.
Yeah, and in that too, there is so much power in that because you're not choosing to get lost in all of it, but the fact that you've invited that back in just to see what's in there and you're moving through it is brilliant, right? Because you can bypass by just never drinking it for years and years and years, but the energy of what lives behind that addiction or that need still is very much alive.
Right. And this is what we see with when people stop smoking, right? They stop smoking, and then the energy of addiction, which they, was being harnessed or funneled through cigarettes or whatever, then will go on often to eating. And so when you're not addressing the root of why that behavior is there in the first place, you're just translocating the energy into something else usually. And so that's why it's super common for people to quit smoking cigarettes and gain a lot of weight after. It's because that energy is just translocating, shifting into another place. You haven't got down to the root. And maybe it'll come out in more drinking, whatever. Everybody's programs are slightly unique to them. So yeah, it's been really interesting to see. But now I just feel like there is a light on this thing, and I know what this energy feels like, and so it can more easily be healed. And I can feel the programs, being at work that, I've had a long day. They want to every day. I now have to listen to this part of me go, oh, you should just have a beer, or whatever. And yeah, it's cool that I'm in a place now where that doesn't freak me out. It's like I'm powerful enough to go, yeah, I could, but I'm not going to. And then some days be like, yeah, I could, and today I'm going to choose to. And that was another part that I had to, really come to, is it felt like, I had this love affair being a bartender with alcohol for a number of years. And then it felt like through my depression, that all got taken away, and it wasn't a choice anymore because it felt so terrible to me. And so now I feel like I'm going through like the pendulum swing the other way, where I went through a period of not having it. I went through a period of having it. And now I'm like balanced more in the middle. And now I get to actually experience it and then choose, is this something that I want in my life? Whereas before, it didn't as much feel like a choice. It was like, I have to stop myself doing this thing.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I think in the future too, I'd love to go when I start to wrap my journey around addiction more, like the deeper I go, I think that's going to be a fascinating episode to understand really what is the energy of addiction. I mean, it's different for everybody, but it's definitely something that I'm in right now that I want to go deeper into. To anybody out there, if you are interested in learning how to go deeper into your stuff and really learn how to walk the path of a being of oneness, we start school January 21st. Our spring semester kicks off. You can join a free student enrollment at Masters of Self University to learn all about what it means to be a student, what classes you'll take, and everything like that. Me and Danny will be in some of the classes. We'll also be coaching classes. So we would love to see you there January 21st. So get enrolled now. And till next time, we'll see you guys then.
Bye.
Bye.